The station where our veterans' voices are heard. MBR Talk.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Welcome, Quack.
Program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Ah, there it is. You tuned into the Farron Dozier Show on nbradio.us, TikTok edition, and Live Sports. Catch me here Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time, only on nbradio.us. Shout out. How did I do? Was that a good take? That might work. Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh, man, that shot was cold,
I
man.
hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn. Are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I ain't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. You know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait? There's a 50% chance the child may have the trait, and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait, 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army, 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell? I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man. There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDCONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org.
It's the guts and it's the glory, 100 stripes, 100 stories. It's the Pledge of Allegiance on the 4th of July. It's them handwritten letters from home. It's them sleepless nights alone. It's his newborn baby he left with his wife. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, here's the line. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Hey. From the fields of Indiana to the swamps of Louisiana to the golden coast of California, Uncle Sam's the only family he's got. His purple heartbeat won't stop, and his 18th birthday was the day he was born. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, here's the light. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, stand on the front line. marching line. Hey. Hey.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the Farron Dozier Show right here on MB Radio. That's right, the Military Broadcast Radio Network. Thank them for allowing us to have this platform for us to share and to talk about what we're up to. Make sure you can hear my voice. There we go. Again, thanks for tuning into the Military Broadcast Radio Network, the Farron Dozier Show here Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time. Make sure you go and you check out all the other talk shows, the broadcast, the podcast here on the network. That QR code right there, you can go there and donate to this platform. They provide all the services for us as well. So make sure you can support us, and so that we can get other veterans here sharing their life, sharing their stories, educating, providing services, and providing knowledge, and just a place for relatedness for us as veterans. If you served in the military, like myself, sometimes, we hear conversations in the world that, civilians are not going to understand you. Civilians don't understand. They're not going to understand you. Well, I'm here to tell you, after 24 years of service and being retired for 12 years, I don't understand Farron. So I don't put the pressure on people in my life to try to understand me when I realize that I don't understand me, right? So one of the things about my talk shows is creating the relatedness for one another, right? So if we can relate to one another and you can use your imagination as you do when you go to the theme parks and the Not Scary Farm and all those other ways that you use your imagination to put yourself in those stories, you can actually do that same thing to put yourself in the life of another person. Now, we may say that you can't walk in my shoes. Guess what? I say that you can. I say that you can use your imagination to relate to me to the point that you could experience what would you do given these situations, given those circumstances in life. How would you respond? How would you act? And guess what? It's probably no different than how I would respond or react to those things in life. So that's the relatedness that's so important. Don't understand me. Because if you try to understand me, you're listening to what you understand, and the rest of what I'm saying, you're just throwing it out the window and you're not even paying attention because in your mind, I don't understand this dude. And then sometimes in that communication, we don't have the courage to say, hey, you know what? Start over. What did you say? I didn't get that. We would rather pretend and act like I know what you said. And then when you walk away, I'm like, dude, what was that dude talking about? I have no idea what this cat was talking about. Like, that's the experience that we have sometimes with one another. So it takes a level of responsibility, a level of confidence, or courage to say, hey, you know what? Stop. Start over. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand. So those are the kind of conversations we have here on my platform on the Farron Dozier Show. You can catch me also Sundays at 8 p.m. on KCA Radio. That's right, KCA Radio on AM/FM radio in the Inland Empire. We do another version of the Farron Dozier Show over there. Plus, we do some sports talk with the Sports Collective media, TV, and radio segments over there. And it's also a variety show as here. So again, thank you for listening in. I'm working out some details right now with my guest, Caldwell. He is a 91-year-old mental health educator, Korean era veteran. And right now we're having some challenges on him being connected to this episode. So as I work through these details with him, I have some things that I would like for you to listen to and to just get a sense of what the conversations that we have on the Farron Dozier Show. And if you would like to be a guest, you could go to farrond.com or at Farron Dozier right here on all of these platforms right there. You see that my finger pointing right there. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you can reach me there, set up a conversation. We can talk, and maybe you could be a guest and sharing your life, sharing your story. What I want to do is I have a couple of PSAs, like I said, that I want to share with you. These are very important topics, things that we care about in our conversations, veteran, youth, mentoring, you name it. These are the things that we care about. So I'm going to play this PSA for you. This will introduce you to Caldwell and about his education and what he's been up to the last 6+ decades. And as I work the details out with him, get him to be actually live on the broadcast right here. So check this out. This is the Farron Dozier Show. I'm going to play some PSAs and then check out this conversation about veterans and, what some of us may deal with in life. Life before, during, and after service. The Farron Dozier Show on MB Radio. Shout us out. What's the count? Zetovia salve, made from natural and organic ingredients, good for inflammation, poor circulation, hemorrhoids, yeast infection, lip sores, dry coughs, eye pain, minor cuts and bruises, and ready to purchase at botanicaherbalco.com. 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 Do you remember studying sickle cell in biology class? What's the Count on Sickle Cell Trait Prevention is here to bring you awareness, education, and prevention conversations around the risk factors of this inherited gene. Visit wdconsct.org.
Muchos de nosotros nos vemos afectados por la enfermedad de células falciformes a diario y un número creciente simplemente no nos damos cuenta. Los impactos de esta enfermedad afectan a todas las personas y en especialmente a las personas de color y con antecedentes diversos. Estar en servicio conmigo y con los demás a medida que creamos una mayor conciencia sobre cómo identificar y dirigir el tratamiento de los rasgos de células falciformes y ayudar a las familias a saber cómo superar el trastorno de células falciformes. WDCONS.
Some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Calmago. Calmago is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes in moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Calmago decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit Calmago.com to learn how you can get Calmago through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
This is Farron from the Farron Dozier Show, 8 p.m. Pacific Time on KCAA Radio, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCAA Radio.com website, the station that leaves no listener behind, and MBR Radio. That's right, MBR Radio on all their streaming platforms, including MBR Radio on Roku TV, Sunday nights live, 8 p.m. Pacific Time on KCAA Radio and MBRradio.us. The Farron Dozier Show. For more information, search FarronD.com. Tune in to the Farron Dozier Show on KCAA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCAAradio.com website on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific Time. Brought to you by Sports Collective TV, Sports Collective Radio, and Sports Collective Media. We got the Heme Factor, we got In the Zone, and we got Fourth Down in the 20-second timeout sports segment. All for you right here on the Farron Dozier Show on KCAA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCAAradio.com website with my guest hosts Robert Lamar and Coach Will. Catch us on Sports Collective Media on Instagram and Facebook. And make sure you watch us Sunday nights at 8 p.m. on KCAA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCAAradio.com website. Music, talk, sports, and so much more. Farron Dozier Show.
My name is Ann Halley. I am the CEO and founder of the Rhabdomyolysis Foundation. I founded the organization in 2022 in an effort to support survivors and fund medical-related research. If you're interested in getting involved with our organization, you can visit our website at therabdofoundation.org. You can sign up as a volunteer, or you can support our organization by donating directly on our website. And all proceeds will go to support survivors and medical research.
The most compelling social need of humans is to belong. All four of my grandparents were born slaves. My father's father, he was 7 years old and sold away from everything and everybody he knew. He never again saw any member of his family. My father, he was born in 1884. His mother had died in childbirth, and he raised himself from age 8. The sheriff came with his posse, took my father and my oldest brother and beat them. My father died with scars on his back from that beating. If the sheriff puts you in jail in a Jim Crow South, where do you turn to seek justice? I loved school. It became a source of me finding myself. When I had graduated from UCLA in 1957 and was never even able to get an interview, no Jews, no Negroes, no Hispanics, no Orientals need apply. Now what do I do? Boy, you add color to our faculty. That's all we're interested in. All the other counselors were instructed to give me their failing seniors, dopers, rebels, suicidals. Listening to 12th graders who were not going to graduate, they told me what was going on in their lives. I discovered that I had something to offer people that I thought had everything. Word was already out on the campus that the skinny black dude was cool. I got all these kids who want to talk to me, and I don't have enough time to see them. I think I might be able to see everybody if I saw them in groups. Individual psychotherapy on a couch was the only method. Skinny black dude wanted to do groups? You can't do that, because it doesn't exist. To hell with them, let's do it anyway. Parents want to know, what are you doing to bring about this reaction in my kid? I've been sending my kids to the best psychiatrist in Southern California, and this hasn't happened. This shit works. Developing adolescence without narcotics is a radical new national idea. Oh, you can't do that. Alternative school that includes sensitivity to the mental health needs of our students. This is too big for you. Would you be willing to train my managers? Yeah. Who's Caldwell Williams? He hasn't published anything. 22 Iraq-Afghan veterans committing suicide every day. I think I know who these young people are. Mr. Williams, you don't want to touch this. You don't know who we are, Mr. Williams. And I said, yes, I know who you are. Maybe you don't know who you are. Did your parents encounter racism? Oh my gosh, yes. How about your grandparents? Oh my, even worse. Then how did we get here? Someone persisted and prevailed in spite of. I would assert that no less is required of us.
Again, thank you for tuning into the Farron Dozier Show right here on the Military Broadcast Radio Network. That's right, MBR. As I'm preparing you for this interview, that is Caldwell Williams. He is 91 today, and I've been working with Caldwell since 2018. I met Caldwell at a veteran's home. I went to interview a World War II veteran for my Trench Talk show, and he was in the crowd. And after I got done talking to that World War II veteran, interviewing him, Caldwell approached me and shared with me what he was up to in life and his care for veteran suicide and what he's been doing. He came out of retirement in 2014 or so, 14, 15. And so we were on the same path, right? I was going through my life transition of depression and suicide ideation and anxiety and all that conversation that I have to manage today. And he was also using his education that he used from childhood conversations to the brands, the companies that he went to do work for, and then coming out of retirement to work with veteran suicide and these topics that we're going to talk about today. In these last few years, being connected to him and talking to him and listening and having conversations, applying his curriculum to my life, applying the biblical principles to my life, applying the landmark education distinctions to my life, all those pieces. Oh, don't let me leave out cognitive behavior therapy, applying that to my life, applying grief counseling from the VA to my life. What I understand that I could tell you today that I can articulate is that principles work. We are used by principles. We are used by principles that sometimes are corrupted principles, right? That we survive life from. And our conversations are here to help you understand that, yes, those principles are effective in a survival state of mind, but also those principles can harm us and fracture our ability to experience life with joy, with peace, with vitality, with well-being, with those kind of those emotions that we sometimes suppress because we are just fractured from the past and we don't want to feel those emotions no more. I don't care what you just do it, like Nike. Those conversations are real, but sometimes we describe life with our language. We don't say what's so, we describe it. And so with all these conversations and educations and things that I've applied to my life, and then meeting Caldwell, he offered a missing piece. He offered a conversation that I thought I was a good listener, but then I realized that I didn't really listen. I wasn't an effective listener. And with that being said, learning his education, applying his skills to my life, I discovered something about myself. That yes, we do want to belong. We're human beings. We're social beings. We want to belong. But there's one thing that I could tell you from his education that when I applied it to my life, I asked him a question. And I don't know if maybe some of y'all might deal with this. I was dealing with a conversation called ambivalence. Ambivalence is when you are struggling in your mind of trying to figure out what to do, and you don't want to leave a person out, and you don't want to. And so I was dealing with that. Like I would want to go hang out with my friends, but then I want to go hang out with this friend instead. And I felt like if I go hang out with this person or these people, then the other people would be disappointed in me because I didn't choose to go hang out with them. And I couldn't figure out like how, like, what do I do with when I want to go? I can't be in both places at the same time, but I feel like I want to do both of those things. And what I learned was that's a real life empirical conversation about called ambivalence. And so when I talked to Caldwell about ambivalence, he was like, "Hey, you know what?" He actually gave it a word.
And I have him on line one.
All right, let's go. He actually gave me a word to what I was feeling.
Thank you for your service.
What I was experiencing. He said, "Oh, that's ambivalence." I'm like, ambivalence? He's like, yeah, that's the struggle between trying to figure out. And so what he allowed me to see was, instead of me struggling with my battle of trying to be everywhere for everybody and feeling disappointed, not only in them, but in myself, I was able to take that conversation, look up the definition of that word, look at how it applied to my life. And I saw that I could create a conversation. So guess what? If I got 3 things to do in that day, I could actually reach out to those people and say, hey, look, what time you want to do this? What time we doing this? And then I was actually able to go and be with my friend and hang out over here for a few hours and still go and come back and hang out with my friend over here at their event or what they were doing. Do you know how much freedom I got for that? Caldwell, do you remember that conversation?
Yes, now that you remind me.
Do you?
Yes, indeed.
So I'm like, when you gave a word to my experience of my life and the struggles I've dealt with that struggle most of my youth, my younger years, my teenage years, and I was like, you mean to tell me that there's a word that's describing how I've been feeling all my life that I can remember, and if I just take a moment and create the conversation with people, that I can have everything that I want in life, that I can still go hang out with them for a few hours and then go hang out with my other friends and no one's disappointed, and I'm also not disappointed? Like, Caldwell, that was so freeing. Are you there?
What you just said reminds me of a couple of epiphanies that I had during the 8 years that I had a charter school. I don't know how much these people know about me, but in 1970, I received California's first public school charter, 22 years before the legislature passed the law. I was working on University High School in West Los Angeles, where the wealthy people sent their kids still to public schools in 1965. And one of the things that I found was, having grown up myself as directly the grandson of people who were born slaves, my parents were first generation free. I had in high school read a philosopher named Henry David Thoreau, who talked about the masses suffering in silent desperation. And I said, oh my goodness, that's my family. And I thought, because we were descendants of slaves, that was our suffering. As I moved through life, and at age 25 became a counselor at University High School in West Los Angeles, I found high school kids from iconic families in disarray, on drugs, committing suicide, suffering in quiet desperation. And I could name some iconic names now that they're dead. I don't mind revealing. Senator Alan Cranston, Chancellor Chuck Young of UCLA, Simon Ramo, the inventor of the intercontinental ballistic missile, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Seemed that no families were escaping this quiet desperation, even though you could hire a PR firm to tell a romantic story about you.
Right.
And as I pursued my own journey, which was a determination, that my wife and I were fortunate to have 2 sons, to have them escape this syndrome, it turned out that information that I was discovering for my own household was translatable to be monetized. I ended up not only creating an innovative public charter school, but that led me to a 20-year career training corporate executives, among whom were the 6 regional vice presidents of Xerox Corporation, Hughes Aircraft Space and Communication Group, Pacific Bell, etc. The data, no less applicable there as it was in my own household. Retired in 2000, only to come out of retirement when my wife came down with Alzheimer's after we retired, and my brain was still working, and I took on the issue of 22 kids per day committing suicide who had fought in Afghanistan and Iraq. That journey is what led me to meeting Farron Dozier, because the curriculum that I had developed and continued to refine over 6 decades is still relevant and applicable and effective. I don't know, Farron, I would ask you to direct me to elaborate on anything that you would like me to.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, I want to say, I want to acknowledge you publicly, to thank you for your confidence, of whatever you saw in me that day at that home in Inglewood, whatever you heard that day, of me talking to that World War II veteran, and that gave you the indication or the nudge to come and say something to me. I wasn't expecting any of that. And then, thank you for.
If I could speak to that a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
On discovery.
Okay.
In my innovative school that I ran for 8 years, working with children who otherwise had access to the best that Southern California had to offer in terms of mental health and psychiatrists, etc. I learned that collaborative study is more effective than the isolation that predominates in public schools or in our education system, since we've had such.
Mm-hmm.
Sports, they haven't been able to articulate it, but I observed that they pursue collaboration in their athletic team.
Mm-hmm.
It is an aphorism in sports that there's no I in team. Athlete is directed to make your teammates better. And that pervades the sports industry.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the cognitive or intellectual or academic classes, just the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
The education system skims the brightest and the best off the top and focuses on the top 20%. Go to college and brag about how many of those kids get into Harvard and Yale and Stanford and Berkeley. And my question was, what about the other 70 to 80%? They're throwaways.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up in our criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
They predominantly end up, one of the most positive alternatives that they see is joining the military.
Yeah.
If they can't make it in the NBA, or they can't make it as a rapper, or they can't, or they don't want to become a drug dealer.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. When in my transition out of the military, and then my sickle cell trait awareness, and then discovering my voice in this radio podcasting back in 2009, and then now going to school at it and becoming a radio and TV broadcaster certified, things like that. And using that talent or that skill to be open and asked to be interviewing the World War II veteran, then meeting you with your curriculum, and we're on the same type of journey. Again, I want to say thank you for allowing me to hang in there with you through these last 7-8 years almost, and now being able to possibly carry your conversation on because of the confidence and the trust that you have with me. Can you share what you saw in me that allows you to see that I can move this conversation forward while you're alive, and praying that when at that next level that I can take this conversation forward?
It's been a delightful journey. I love you as my third son. I remember in that same house where we met, I asked you to read something and your face changed colors. And I got that you were insecure as a reader.
Definitely.
And that put me in touch with the study skills that I had discovered that we had developed in my school, in which collaborative study, we allow no student in the classroom to go past a word they don't understand.
Yeah.
And the dramatic turnaround, we flipped from the 20%, and sometimes in that school it was considered a really good school, 30% who were qualified for college out of high school. We flipped that to 70%, and the school district said that's impossible.
Yeah.
This Negro must be cheating.
Yeah.
and to this day, I can demonstrate the efficacy of this approach, which then intimidates the education establishment, and it's like,
well,
keep that troublemaker out of here.
Well, let me elaborate on what you said of what you saw in my terror when you asked me to read that, and that's because of a decision that I made in the second grade, and even today I still manage that conversation because from my experience of growing up, even Pastor Larry that I speak at his youth Sundays with right now currently, he would come over to my grandparents' house and he would bring books and he would pay me $1 if I could read those books next time I saw him. And so, but during that second grade class, for some reason, when I would read in class or read the books, my eyes would not stay on the page. It would drop down to the different levels, the different, I'm reading ahead. My mind is already on the next line and I'm still trying to read the lines where I'm at. And so one day in second grade, I raised my hand to read and the teacher called on me. And so what she would tell me was, okay, either use a ruler or use your finger to make sure that you could follow along and stay on the line that you're reading. So that gave me confidence. I raised my hand. I'm reading with my finger and I'm reading the cat in the hat, Jack and Jill, and went up and so one day I did that, man, and somebody in the class laughed at me. And when I heard them laughing at me, in that moment to survive that embarrassment, I said, I'm never going to read out loud and I'm never going to raise my hand again. And that stopped me from 6 years old until I discovered that at 46. So for 40 years, I lived that I'm not going to read out loud and I'm not going to raise my hand because I was so disappointed in myself and embarrassed of the people that laughed at me. And I never forgot that feeling. And so when I'm in my radio broadcasting school, I was in Radio Academy at the time in 2015, my instructor said, hey, I need you to read this. It's your turn, Farron, read that paragraph. And I told him no. And he's like, no, you got to read it. And I'm like, no. And so putting up a fight, I ended up reading it because I'm participating in the class. But I drove home from school that day wondering, why did I act like that? Why did I give the instructor such a hard time to read that paragraph that I'm here learning to be a broadcaster? And using the principles that I had been studying at the time before I met Caldwell, I realized that story popped up in my head driving home of me sitting in class, reading with my finger, and then someone laughing. And when I took that story and I unraveled it with my curriculum, that education that I was taking, I saw the embarrassment and the disappointment and the shame. But what I also saw was the impact on Farron's life of not reading out loud and not raising my hand. And then I looked at, how did I have a military career of 24 years not reading out loud? And what I saw was, as a platoon leader or platoon sergeant, I give it to somebody else to read, or I wouldn't raise my hand to read, or I would just not try to read, or if I had to, I struggled. But then the most important impact I saw was on my daughters, because now here I'm at 46 years old in this radio academy where I'm learning how to use my voice and read these characters and use my voice to animate myself, that I saw that at my daughters, I didn't have an opportunity to read those storybooks to them. I didn't read bedtime stories to my daughters. What I did was we were in the VHS era. And so I taught my children how to go and pick a movie and put it in the rewinder. And then she had a TV with the VCR on it so she could pick her own movie and put it in and sit on her bed and watch it. And so I wasn't in the room with her. She was by herself watching those movies, cartoon movies, when I had an opportunity to read those stories to her. And so I called my daughters. And I said, each one of them, I acknowledged that, hey, you know what? I said, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to be your dad and to teach you things and to grow up with you and share life with you. But also I discovered that in my fatherhood, I didn't read storybooks to you. I didn't take the time to read Dr. Seuss or Lion King or all of those character books that you had because I was embarrassed because of a story that I made up about myself about reading out loud. And each one of my daughters said, Dad, don't worry about it. It's cool. It's fine. That was a long time ago. We were all right. But I was hurt from it. I was hurt from my opportunity to do that. And I'm grateful that they were able to tell me that it didn't bother them. But as we get these conversations going with Caldwell and the things that we're going to talk about in this episode, these are the conversations that his curriculum goes to help people discover the emotional, the social emotional conversations that we really don't get a chance to talk to or talk about in particular environments like our home, like our school systems, right?
May I speak to that for a moment?
Go ahead.
My 15-year-old grandson,
mm-hmm.
I had a chance to hang out with him a week ago. He's an extraordinary, highly achieving youngster.
Mm-hmm.
And in his he just started high school in the ninth grade. All through his school career, teachers have astutely used him as a second teacher because the other kids gravitate to him and he assists them in learning. But I want to give you a little background on how a way to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Before he started preschool, I had spent the night with my son and his family, and Milo's his older son. And at the breakfast table, this kid who had just begun preschool at the time before kindergarten,
mm-hmm.
On the wall opposite the dining table were several hundred large cards, vocabulary words.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Grandpa, the game I want to play with you is you pick a word. I'm supposed to define the word and use it in a sentence.
Mm.
And this is the 5-year-old kid. So I picked the word and he said, Grandpa, with you, my sentence has to make you laugh. So this kid, before he started school, was literate. And when he got to school, the teacher was astute enough, because he was a wigglewort, because he already knew what she was trying to teach. She was astute enough to utilize him instead of letting him wiggle. You can help me help others, which is part of our philosophy of collaborative study.
Mm-hmm.
That's another way of saying what the sports industry already knows. If you're the best athlete, your responsibility is to make your teammates better.
Mm-hmm.
And that philosophy is applicable in the academic classroom. And I'm 92 years old, and before I leave this vale of tears, I want to get this into the public discussion because it makes a difference in a majority of the kids' lives who are now throwaways.
Yeah. No, again, man, thank you, for taking time out today. There's one conversation that I want to have with you most recently. I recently got delivered and free from not being vulnerable. Again, I made a decision at age 14 that I was not going to be vulnerable and that I have to defend myself in relationships. And that was from a 14-year-old girlfriend breakup in junior high school. And that girl broke up with me because she said that I wasn't paying attention to her. And I think she gave me at least 3 opportunities to get it together. And on that third opportunity, when I went back to her to try to reconcile that relationship or ask her to give me another chance, she told me, no, I'm not the guy for you. You're not the guy for me. And she started dating my friend's friend. Now, in junior high school at 14 years old, that was one of my final decisions that I made in my peer age, that I was not going to be vulnerable, and I have to defend myself in relationships. And then that's how I lived my life from 14. That was a 41-year decision that I made from 14, because at 55, just a few weeks ago, this month, I discovered that me not being vulnerable, it caused me to defend myself for my behavior, for my character, for my personality, and for my body language. And in the conversations that I've been having with Caldwell and my personal development education and with church, and all the other stuff that I've been applying to my life, when I was able to look at why I wasn't being vulnerable, one of the conversations that came up was, in life, most of us live this experience of have, do, and be versus be, do, and have. And then I saw that like, oh, okay, I remember that distinction. But then there was a conversation that she said, in life, we can choose life the way it is and choose life the way it isn't. And sometimes you hear people say, oh, this is just what it is. Life is just what it is. Like, they don't complete the circle. It is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. Life is what it is, and life ain't what it ain't. And when she put it in that context for me, Caldwell, what I heard for myself was, I can choose being loved, but I can't choose being unloved. And the ability to choose being loved and to choose being unloved gave me the space that I could actually be okay with Farron. Like, I felt whole. And so then I start to look at what other parts of my life that I haven't chosen. Well, I haven't chosen grief. I haven't chosen loss, the way it is and the way it isn't. Then I saw I haven't chosen being vulnerable, the way it is and the way it isn't. And the moment that I chose being vulnerable, the way it is and the way it isn't, a space opened up for me. And then I went to the Bible and says, okay, what does the Bible have to say about vulnerability and how we treat people and how we are with ourselves? And what I saw was James chapter 5, verse 16. And that verse says, confess your faults to one another, right? And so when I looked at confess your faults to one another, and then I looked at choosing vulnerability the way it is and the way it isn't, I saw that for the heart of us, we're taught as men, as boys, don't show your feelings. You can't be emotional. You got to be tough. You can't cry. You can't do this. You can't. But I saw that the word said, I get my strength in confessing my faults to my brother or sister. And I get my strength in praying for you and through sickness so that we can be emotionally. Like, when I saw that, Caldwell, from the spiritual context versus how I was living in my heart, it allowed my heart to be softened enough to download that scripture. And I saw that me being vulnerable is not me being weak. It's actually me being strong and confident and getting my power back, because I'm able to actually share my emotions with people. Because I let people tell me they don't like what I say about them. I'm allowed people to tell me that I hurt their feelings, but I've never been able to tell people, you know what, you hurt my feelings when you said that. I've never been able to say to a woman, you know what, you hurt me when you said that like that. But when I got that choosing life the way it is and the way it isn't, and then I got the word of God that said, confess your faults to one another, it gave me that I could be vulnerable. I could actually confess my faults and take responsibility for how I land on you in life. See, a lot of times I was defending my position. Well, I said that because you made me mad, or I said that because you did me like this. So I defend my intentions, but I wasn't present to how I hurt that person. And with that being said, it gave me the space to then be responsible for Farron's behavior, Farron's body language, for Farron's character, even for Farron's personality, on how I land for people. And I don't mean to hurt people's feelings, but I know that how I act can cause people to be damaged or be hurt by Farron's behavior and character. And Caldwell, that is something that it another layer that I just peeled off, but I'm bringing you to this conversation because when I looked at that part of my life of being vulnerable now, I said, what what could cause a child to feel disconnected from his mother at 2 years old? And when I looked at one of my stories, I'm gonna give it to you. One of my stories, I grew up at 2 years old feeling like I was disconnected from my mother, and and but I didn't have language. And when I put all of our conversations together again in that subject, I saw that, man, I felt like my mom left me with my grandparents at 2 years old, even though it was a good idea because they were watching me while she had to go to work, and she picked me up on the weekends. But I looked at the Bible and I said, okay, God, what else is there? And I heard the conversation. I remember strife. And when I looked at strife, and the Bible says that, we're born in sin, which is rebellion, and we're wrapped in iniquity. And when I saw iniquity, I'm like, well, iniquity means that disappointment that I was wrapped in my mind as a child, it was connected to how I behaved in life. And so I was living from disappointment. I was living from shame. I was living from embarrassment in a lot of my life since 2 years old. And when I discovered that 2-year-old decision, I was able to free myself from my mom and love my mom completely. Like there's no fractures between me and my mom, but that was the last piece of 55, so 53 years that I lived in that iniquity of a strife that I was disconnected from my mom. Now, you and I have been talking for the last, since 2018, and you have a story about when you were born and what you saw with your mom. So can you share that story with the listeners on how this conversation it impacts us even in our adult life? Can you please share that story, please?
Yes, I can. The name of the charter school that I ran from 1970 to 1978 was Innovative Program School. My proposal to the board was an innovative approach to public education. I wanted to lift mental health to equal focus with the traditional cognitive curriculum because of the things that I've alluded to in this conversation, the desperate struggles that were going on in households that had PR that said everything was wonderful. So I got the charter, and right away, a girl, Eve, on the first day of the school, in which every student in the school had a class with me as the guidance counselor. Eve said, my only brother, and there were 3 kids in the family, my only brother just committed suicide last week. And I can't sleep. And if I close my eyes, I'm terrified. So all the other kids in the room were, of course, keenly interested. Because we're near UCLA, I went to the UCLA library to try to find something on death and dying and fear and the like. And a woman named Kubler-Ross had written a book called The 7 Stages of Grief. That's the only thing I could find. So we read from the 7 stages of grief, and Eve's nightmares continued. So I thought, okay, I'm licensed to innovate. So I created a meditation exercise at the end of which I had each person in their private space die and see what happened. And we would talk about it afterwards. And in a class of 25 students, some said, I was old and I just went to sleep and blah, blah, blah. There were a variety of stories. I don't even remember what Eve's story was. But what I do know is her nightmares stopped. And the other students in the school heard about it, and the parents heard about it and wanted to know, what did you do, and wanted to participate. So we had this meditation exercise about death and dying, which led to, subsequently, to make it short on this conversation, birth. problems and concerns and issues related thereto, why don't you create an exercise, a meditation exercise for being born? So I created a birthing exercise. And remarkably, because these are all teenagers and almost all of them still had mothers, when they went home to tell their parents their experience, we did not have a single case of the mother not agreeing with that student's description of the experience. For example, in the birthing exercise, we have them assume the fetal position and put hands on them, and I would talk them through the meditation. And at the end of what I would describe as the agreement is 9 months. And after 9 months, you get to come out. And we had students who didn't want to come out. and we had some students who just popped right out. Over and over and over again, when the students talked to the mom, we found a correlation between the kid not wanting to come out and breech birth, where the kid didn't turn the right way, so that they had to do a cesarean section to take it out of the stomach because the kid didn't turn, etc. There was a correlation between our meditation exercise, where kids had some resistance and being born on time, and problems that the mother described. And to shorten the story, at long last, the student said, "Okay, Caldwell, it's your turn." So at the end of each exercise, what happened, we slide the hands down the person as a simulating coming through the birth canal, and students would lift the child up and place him in the arms of a girl. And in my situation, during the meditation in the womb, I was happy as a lark. And then when I was instructed, okay, you're 9 months are up, time to come out, I popped right out. It felt great. The whole thing was a very positive experience for me. Then they lifted me up and placed me in the arms of a girl, and I burst into tears. I was about 40 years old at the time. This 40-year-old man burst into tears with his student.
Mm-hmm.
And what was going on in my head, these exact words: "Don't cut me loose. Don't make me leave you." I had experienced my birth as a rejection of my mom. And the insights, the epiphanies were popping in my head. All of my life, I chose only girls where I could be in charge, because I didn't trust that if I made myself vulnerable to her in my most vulnerable time, she'd push me away. I was so excited about that insight. I hopped in my Plymouth and hurried to my mother's house. She was 81 years old at the time. And I told her about my experience, and she chuckled and said, "Oh, did I never talk to you about your birth?" And I said, "No." She said, I was born on a farm in East Texas. My parents had a 120-acre farm that they owned. And everybody was in the field. It was April 4th, 1934. Everybody were in the fields, and she was, of course, at home. I'm number 10 of 11 kids. So it was a large family. And of course, she was always in the house working on something, washing and cleaning and cooking, etc. She said, "The 9 children before you, my birth pains would come in time, and Dad would get on a horse and go into Linden, the town, about 4 miles away, and bring the doctor." And she said, "You just popped out." They were in the fields, and I thought, there's no time. I put a quilt and a sheet on the floor, and you popped right out. And I said, they'll be home for lunch soon, and then they'll help me. And she said, oh, okay, I know how to do this. This is number 10. She said, I tied your umbilical cord with a string, and with scissors, I cut your cord. Now, remember, in my meditation, I had said, don't cut me loose. Don't make me leave you. And I saw in my head, in that meditation, the umbilical cord. So my mother, at 81, confirmed my memory and in mental health, in which my academic and professional training instructs. We tend to be able to remember back to age 3 and nothing beyond that. Well, I can tell you, I have evidence corroborated by almost 100 parents that we're able to remember our birth. We can go back that far, given the opportunity and the circumstances in which, for one example, meditation can provide. And the decisions made, and I know that Farron has talked to you guys about how the mind works in this regard. Decisions made in childhood, because every experience is recorded in the mind and is available and accessible to us. Most readily, the ones that are accessible to us are those associated with trauma. Whenever the current situation is at all similar to that first trauma, the whole string of similar experiences come down on us, and we're right back there where we were in that first trauma, which is what PTSD is. And I'll end with this. The remedy is tell the truth. Go there, allow the experience, and listen to it so that you can make new choices as an adult. And forgive the child for making the choice they made, because they got you to where you are now. They survived and are entitled to be forgiven for not knowing what you now know. That's it for me, Farron.
Man, thank you again. Thank you for being open to share your education process around the meditation, and then what you discovered out of that, because these are the things that I also had to do for myself in my own healing, that I was able to discover 10 different decisions that I made from 2 years old up until almost 40. And I didn't start my healing journey until 40. So I had to go back and challenge the first 40 years of my life up against another, up against a curriculum that was outside of my own mind, my own thought process. I had to find something that I trusted, that I had confidence in, that showed me that, okay, these stories that you made up, are you willing to challenge those stories? And I was like, yes. So then let's go. And when I did that work, Caldwell, I started to discover the 2-year-old, the 5-year-old, the 6-year-old with the reading. So I'm going to tell you, the 2-year-olds with my mom, the 5-year-olds with my dad, the 6-year-old was with my second grade class, the 8-year-old I was abandoned by my mom, the 11-year-old I was embarrassed for food stamps and walking to the store, and I would never have a car that was a good running car because I had to walk to the store, and I was embarrassed and in shame walking back home with the grocery cart that my stepfather was pushing, that we paid food with the food stamps with at 11. The 14-year-old decision with the girl, that the breakup, that I'm not going to be vulnerable. The 23-year-old that I became a liar because I was embarrassed that I had 2 daughters at 23, and I became a liar because I wanted to be accepted and I wouldn't tell people that I had children. The 36-year-old decision that I made when my collapse from sickle cell trait exertion, that I made it mean my life was over. Like, and then the decisions of being free at 40 years old, the decision of doing this work, and then the 50-year-old decision that I made. I mean, of now from negative, and the last two are life-changing decisions, right? And I really appreciate you, man, for again the confidence that you have in me to be a part of your program, GoalTenders and LBI Solutions, as a company and as a curriculum, and even the stuff that we just have conversations around, where I feel like no one understands when I'm talking. I feel like people don't get me because I've done my work to be free from those conversations, but I hear people say that, oh, that doesn't happen to me, or I don't know what that is. But when they tell the truth, or they hear the space where they could say, you know what, I do have something like that in a different version of it. It may not be the exact same story of mine, but the principles will allow you to unravel that story if you're willing to put that story inside of those conversations. The same way that cognitive behavior did for me, that allowed me to stop saying that I don't trust women, to say, hey, you know what? I trust women 50%. And now I can no longer say I don't trust women. But then I had to look and see, well, how much do I trust Farron? Well, guess what? I don't trust Farron that much. And if I have to put a percentage to Farron's trust, maybe I trust myself 50 or 60%. So then if I don't trust myself but 50 or 60%, say 60%, then how can I expect me to allow me to trust other people 100% or let them trust me 100%? So even the cognitive behavior that the VA offers, even the personal development courses, even your listening program, even grief counseling, those are all principles. And if we're willing to put our life in those conversations and have the confidence or the trust that we can be and do the work, I agree with you, Caldwell, because what I've learned in my 15 years of that education, when I'm ready to have a breakthrough, my body pulls the anxiety out. So when I have the thought and I have the memory and the story, what arises is the body sensations connected to all that. And if I allow myself to be with that body sensation and the aches and the pains, or the stomach gut pain, or the nervousness or the anxiousness, and I use the educations to process my thoughts and tell the truth, like you said, as an adult today, man, Caldwell, I get free from the body sensations. And then now the thought and the body sensation and the story is no longer connected. I'm not triggered by it. That's the freedom.
You just summarized our work.
Man.
Did you hear me?
Yes. This is your work.
Our work.
This is our work.
Yes.
And so this is the military network. This is the military broadcast radio. This is MBR. This platform is designed to reach veterans. We have a lot of first responders, their family members, veterans, their family members. What do you want to say to our veteran community as we focus PTSD, we focus the traumas, we talk about the objectification of labeling another human being from a human being to a terrorist, and we kill terrorists, that one day our brain will remember that wasn't a terrorist, it was a person, and then I have to live with that decision that I killed. Like, all these conversations that you have are effective and have been proven that can help our community from stop talking about it to talk from it. And that's all I've learned to do for myself in my 15 years of healing, was not talk about it, but talk from it, and put my life in those stories, and put my life in the conversations, and share from my experience, not just the upset, but the before, the during, and the after of those curriculums of your education. What do you want to say to our veteran population, our veteran community, our first responders, and their family members?
When I first started on this path to reach out to kids who had fought in Afghanistan and Iraq, my focus was on the young guys. And I had assumed that the older guys pretty much had finished their journey and were not receptive. And then where I was located when I met you in Inglewood, I met Black Vietnam veterans. And this is I can make a general statement because it is predominantly true. 100% of them had been born in the South, as they described it, working on sugarcane plantations in Louisiana, cotton plantations in Georgia, in Mississippi, when they were conscripted, when they were drafted into the military. And it was, according to them, an upgrade in their standards of living. I remember one man saying, my lunch in the cane fields was molasses, syrup, and a biscuit in a tin can. And then I got into the military. I had, 3 meals a day and clean underwear and all that. And at first, I celebrated. But I had no education. And so in Vietnam, we were thrown into the worst of the jungle battles. And found that all of the commissioned officers, or most of our commissioned officers, were white boys from the South who had gotten their commissions in ROTC in Southern schools, and often had their stars and bars, that Confederate flag, with them in the jungle before they slept. And we came to translate some of their behavior as offensive, and we had gotten hooked on heroin because heroin was like popcorn in our location. And the brass looked the other way because it did not diminish our willingness and ability to kill gooks. But it also didn't diminish our willingness and ability to lob a grenade on a bigoted commissioned officer who had his stars and bars at his location. So a number of them freely committed participating in fragging. But the most important part of this story is I found that at age 70, they were open to and willing to learn and begin to heal. Because when they came, and this is a general statement, when they came home, addicted, uneducated, and unsophisticated, they had no intention of going back to the South. So we stayed in California and we hustled in the Bay Area and in Los Angeles. And every single one of them ultimately ended up incarcerated. And while incarcerated, Elijah Muhammad had discovered the power of the objectification and said to them, don't you get it? The white man's the devil. He's the object. And by any means necessary, you should do, come join me and we'll deal with that. But the redeeming experience for me was to discover that at age 70, they were receptive to the data that you and I have been talking about, and eager to heal. And so they are included in our community of former students and friends who help us to validate the principles and the concepts that we teach.
You know what, man? No, you're good. I appreciate you. Again, it goes back to, let's see, I got like 15 more minutes. I want you to touch on for our veteran brothers and sisters the power of objectification, because the way that you explained it to me, it made so much sense that me joining the military at age 19, I never really thought about that I gave my life to death in the military until in my early 50s. I never really looked at the training that we went through. Well, I did have this one story. I remember because I wasn't vulnerable, right? So remember the decision I made, I'm not going to be vulnerable. What the military did for me was it allowed me to suppress that vulnerability and emotions because they taught us from day one, you can't worry about where your girlfriend or your wife is at, because if you are daydreaming on this field and then this training, you could get everybody killed. So you need to pay attention. You need to make sure that you are focused and you are, listening to the instructors, because this training is going to save your life and your buddy's life, and could be your whole squad and your battalion could be rested on your shoulders. If you over here, Jody's got your girlfriend and gone. So don't worry about your wife or Jody's got her and gone. She's gone. Caldwell, what that did to me was allow me to just cut off my emotions completely, to disconnect myself from my home, from my wife, at the time from my family, from my friends, and only focus on the training and surviving life in that moment for the rest of my career, because I need to make sure that I learn these navigations and these training developments, that I can apply this to save my life if I ever have to go to war. Now, what that also did for me was it reinforced that I can't have emotions, that I can't worry about people, that I can't connect to people because I don't want to be emotionally tied. And how that played out in my life is that when I got ready to go to a training or get deployed for an event or whatever, that I would disconnect from my wife like 2 weeks prior. I would start an argument or something so that by the time I left, we were fighting and that we weren't really talking, and I could just leave. Bye, I'm out. And to see the impact on how that destroyed my marriage, not my behavior only, that purposely, like it was none of that stuff that I did was because I was a kind of person, but it was skills, survival skills, techniques to learn how to disconnect from people so that I don't have to miss them while I'm gone. I don't have to have that heartbreak feeling that I felt at 14, or even back, as I said, to my mom, being disconnected at 2 years old. So can you talk about that before we get out of here in this last segment, the power of objectification as it relates to not just our military career, but how we label one another as black and white and Mexican and Asian, and the name labels that we do to one another? Can you end us with that, please?
It is the secret sauce of the autocratic authoritarian dictator. When I was drafted in 1957, the Korean War was winding down, the shooting had stopped. And in basic training, we were trained to kill the aggressors. They had stopped labeling the aggressors gooks, which was revived when in Vietnam. You're not killing a human, you're killing an aggressor. Always in 6 weeks, the Department of Defense has figured out the equation to, in 6 weeks, transform an innocent, malleable young man into a killing machine. And a part of how that is done is by objectifying the other. So we've gone from Nazis and Japs and gooks and aggressors to terrorists. These days, it's been terrorists, and so the kids who are now being trained are trained to kill terrorists, and that's a powerful but subtle distinction that can go undiagnosed and untreated. every person who goes through the military and serves in the military experiences mindful injuries that are invisible and undiagnosed, and thus untreated. And one of the experiences I found working with young Iraq, Afghanistan veterans is these kids came home to women who were in their own transformation journey, seeking to be more than a child-bearing object at home. And as one veteran pointed out to me when he showed up at my group, he would brag about how he handled his woman. And his woman had worked very hard to get him into our curricular training. And it was a couple of months in where other veterans like yourself were leading the training. He pulled me aside and said, and by the way, he came in with a lot of bravado, bragging about white privilege and denigrating blacks and Latinos. And more than half of our group were blacks and Latinos. And they said they wanted to kick his butt and kick him out. And I said, we don't throw anybody away. The boy is hurting. You don't attempt to hurt others without being in pain yourself. But at long last, this boy pulled me aside and said, my mother was poor white trailer trash in rural Wisconsin. She worked as a truck stop waitress. I didn't know who my dad was until I was 15 years old. But I was good in the classroom, and I looked around and adopted the attitude of the people who were in charge. And in rural Wisconsin, white bigots were in charge. So that I adopted the culture because I wanted to fit in. And when I I joined the Marines because I didn't know what else to do after high school. My cadre, my leaders, commissioned leaders were bigots. So I was comfortable at home, and he was a killing machine. After service, and by the time he came to us, 40 men who had been in his Marine unit had committed suicide post-service. And he was finally receptive to what we were teaching. And he said, I'd never heard anybody talk like you guys talk here. And everything that you've said, I've checked out. I'm going to Pasadena City College, and I test your theories on my instructors and other members of the class, and it seems to work. And so the objectification, and by the way, even to this day, he still refers young veterans that he meets to us. My empirical truth is that the truth of what we're teaching is applicable to 70-year-olds or 27-year-olds, and ultimately to middle school kids who are just beginning the journey, the value of which information can make a difference in their life trajectory. I appreciate the opportunity for you to invite me to be a part of this conversation, Farron. Thank you.
Caldwell, thank you for saying that. And I want to add, before we get out of here, the other side of that real quick, and you can chime in at any point, Caldwell, that the same objectification that we talk about, that we were trained as veterans to defend this country, it's not about a right or wrong, or good or bad. This is We're 1% of the population that joins the military at any given time. There's only like 1% of us that join the military at any given time. However, we do need objectification to survive life. So in certain instances, we need to be able to objectify conversations so that we can make sure that our children stay alive and that they're safe and that we get home and whatever that conversation is. But just like the Bible, just like the word, it talks about the heart of us. And the moment that I objectify another human being, it changes the context of what that word is meant to be used for. And when I objectify another human being as an object, and then I could talk to you like the world talks about that object. If I objectify you as a black person, then I can talk to you like the world talks about black people. And it could be good, bad, or indifferent, right? And so the way that we label one another, even in this world of veteran homelessness, who am I to say that that person is homeless? It's let that person determine for themselves if they're homeless, right? But the moment that we label them as a homeless veteran and then we treat them as such, as the world talks about a person who's homeless. I want to live in an RV. I don't even want to live in a house. I want to live in an RV for the rest of my time. Does that make me homeless? You know, and so the way that we label one another, even let's go to sports, Caldwell. We've seen fans of different sports kill each other, fight each other in a stadium, hurt one another because they have on a jersey of another team that's not my team. And so I don't like you because you have a Clipper jersey on, or I don't like you because you're a Raider fan and I'm a Kansas City fan. And we will talk down to people because of a jersey that we don't even own the team, let alone stocks. So the power of our language all the way down to you're black, I'm white, you're Mexican. The disconnection from the humanness of the objectification is what we're out to unravel so that people get to be connected to one another as a person first. Even if you label me as a veteran, now you talk to me as a veteran and not who Farron is as a person. And those labels and that ability to label one another when it comes to another human being, for me, is where society is all in disarray. It's all, like you say, messed up as far as the system even using that psychological warfare to pin us against each other.
Well, we don't have time here, but we need to take a look at who benefits from that model.
No, say it. No, you got to say it. Say it. You got it. Say it.
Well, no, there's not enough time. I'm saying that we come from, all humans come from a leadership paradigm that is where the leadership is authoritarian. Mm-hmm. No matter what part of the planet you come from, you're born to, you lived in a tribe, and the leader of the tribe was a king or a potentate or a chief or whom you violated or offended at risk of losing your head. Mm-hmm. All of us come from that experience. These guys who decided to experiment with this democracy idea, an old Greek notion, I used to be pissed off at them. I'm no longer pissed off at them. They did the best they could with what they had. Mm-hmm. Give me your tired, your poor, your wretched refuse, the huddled masses learning to breathe free, etc. Romantically was, God, that's a great idea. They welcomed everybody. Mm-hmm. But practically, that meant we've got all this land and we want to control it. These few Englishmen and the Spaniards and the Portuguese and the and the French want this land as well. Mm-hmm. So if we let people in who feel good about us, we can control the whole damn game. Mm-hmm. But what we agreed upon, unwritten, and our historians apparently agreed not to tell the true story, is 100% of the non-English immigrants to the United States started out marginalized. You may not be first class. as only Englishmen of first class. There was no English ghetto, but there was a German ghetto and a Scandinavian ghetto and an Italian ghetto and a Jewish ghetto. So I'm saying everybody except Englishmen were marginalized and objectified. I don't know how old you guys are, but have you heard the name WAP, Kinks, Coolies, Rednecks, Crackers, Niggers? Every group was discriminated against and given a pejorative name, except Englishmen. And I'm saying the gang started out objectifying others. You weren't, at my church, I've befriended this couple who are in my age group, and they're from Indiana. And the Indiana mascot for their athletic team are Hoosiers.
Mm-hmm.
You know that name? You heard Hoosiers?
Yep.
I've learned from my new friend, Hoosiers, in her experience in her family, is equivalent to nigger. Hoosiers, when they went into the rich neighborhoods in Chicago or Cleveland, they were treated like niggers. And I learned for the first time, and I'm 92 years old, that Hoosiers is a pejorative to the people who, the average Indiana resident.
Yeah.
But the focus upon the pejorative toward us has been a distraction, so that the pain of the exclusion of Hoosiers and crackers and rednecks. The vice president of the United States wrote a book that sold a lot of books, talking about his background as a hillbilly.
Mm-hmm.
And hillbilly is, even today,
it was derogatory.
This derogatory, and they bring up the bottom of the intellectual and education and economic scale.
Right.
Lyndon Johnson, when he was doing his war on poverty, had in mind hillbillies, the first of the poor people that the Title I funds went to try to help the hillbillies of West Virginia. So our system has
that's right.
dominated that. Anyway, our system has been
broken for, like you said, the democracy is a Greek philosophy, and our country is still ran by dead men ideas, and we that those ideas are old. It's time for some new ideas, but we don't control those ideas. We don't control that system per se. So then we have to make our own way and include ourselves. We're already included.
Leadership by inclusion is an alternative leadership paradigm to authoritarianism.
Amen.
And it's our job to get into the national dialogue.
Well, Caldwell, thank you.
We're working on that.
Thank you for allowing me to be your curriculum trainer. Anything you want to say about your curriculum and my relationship to that training and to the people, so they, kind of know that I'm part of what you're up to.
One of the things of which I'm most proud is we've demonstrated that any person can master the curriculum and at a level of application to their own lives, which then enables them to pass the information along to others.
Yes.
I am 92 years old and comfortable that the work can and will go on because of people like Farron, who, without fancy college degrees, is one of the brightest human beings I've ever had the opportunity to know. And part of my joy, Farron, is watching you discover that during our journey together.
Thank you. Caldwell,
That's it.
thank you for your today, man. I really appreciate you sharing your stories from the birth, the meditation of our birth, to just how your curriculum for the last 6+ decades have been effective, and praying that the connections that we're making today in 2025, that your conversation will live on. Even within me, it will live on, and so I thank you for just, for God allowing me to put you in my life, and to be that mentor that we talk about, that we want, but do we ever allow that person to speak to us in life, right? Regardless of what we deal with your health, and you still fighting for your independence, you are still, using your brain to give back to this world, and to make sure that your legacy is still present. So thank you for today's conversation.
One of the definitions of, for me, love is the experience of well-being. And part of my joy in life is you and I experience well-being as we hang out together.
And we do very, very, very minimal disagreements, very minimal, and we were able to clean them up too if we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Caldwell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye-bye. All right. I hope you've enjoyed that conversation. It'll be available on all the podcasts afterwards. But that was Caldwell Williams, my mentor. This guy has poured into my life with his knowledge, with his education. Graduated from UCLA in 1957. Has done tremendous work around mental health, mental toughness, however you language it. There's one of the many ways that we can help develop and help people heal. We have one solution called LBI Solutions. We're attending to it one way with GoalTenders, however you want to language it, but I'm blessed to be a part of that conversation. As he said, our conversation is a peer-to-peer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not even in a program. I'm a patient advocate. I put my life in these conversations, and I have been able to resolve and heal from a lot of decisions from, as I said, from a child of 2 years old that I can remember to even currently at 55. I'm peeling off these labels that have had me bound and stuck. As the Bible says, as Jesus Christ preached, repent and renew your heart, renew your mind, and change your ways that you think. It's about the heart of us. And the heart of us sometimes is guarded, avoiding shame, disappointment, and embarrassment. And it comes out like anger and frustration and defensiveness and rejection. And however you articulate it for yourself, peel those layers off. And if we begin to tell the truth, tell your truth. You ain't even got to tell your truth to me. Tell it to yourself first. That you want to, and you're willing to say, why do I act like that? I love my mom and dad, and they got on my nerve. And I went to work on why they get on my nerve. And what I saw was, it wasn't my mom and dad. It was Farron. It was my perception of my father. It was my perception of my mother. And it was my perception of myself and who I had to become to survive those hurt moments, those body experiences, those pain sensations. Those what I had to learn to heal from. And at 55, I'm still peeling off layers. And the ability to have this conversation live on, to teach people, you can be about the work, but you got to be willing. That's the first piece. And I pray that the conversations that I have at my level as a patient advocate, that could cause you to want to be willing to look in life and tell the truth. And forgive that child in your side. We talk about it. We hear people describe it and talk about it, but I'm done talking about it. We talk from it. Talk from it. Yes, we're afraid that if I tell you my deepest secrets, that you slander my name, and that's hurtful to slander a person's name. Yes, to use that against a person, that I tell you my deepest secrets and my pains and my emotions as a man, and then I open up to you as a woman, and I talk to you and I share with you, and then you take that information not as a healing process, but as a way to lash back out at me later in an argument. That's slander. Slander is also me taking this interview from Caldwell and chopping it up and making him sound like the worst person on the planet by taking sound bites and mixing it around. That's called slander in broadcasting and in media. And if you pay attention to these Instagram posts and how they cut and they turn, and then there's that person didn't say that all the way in one breath. My interviews are not edited; they're live or they're pre-recorded, and they are what they are. We don't curse. My interviews are all they are. But if you look at media today, and people design these conversations and they chop up those interviews to make a statement or to create a narrative of a subject that's not what that person said all the way through. And then we fight amongst each other about these 60-second posts that we give an opinion about what that person said, and my opinion is wrong and yours is right, or you're right and I'm wrong, of a 60-second clip. No more. Our babies, our children are watching, and they're a mirror of us as parents. That child is mirroring what they hear from you. They may not say it in front of you, but they go to school and they act that way out at school. They act how you act at home, at school with their peers, in 3rd grade, in 4th grade, in 5th grade, in 6th grade, in 7th grade, in 8th grade, in 9th grade, in 10th grade, in college. They mirror what they see at home. And as a parent, we either have to restore that as a parent to our child, or as a child to the parent. Go talk to your mom and dad if they're still alive. Go talk to them and find out how they were when they grew up. How was life for them before they had you? Talk to your grandparents and find out, what did your grandparents go through when they were children? What did they deal with in their generation? And I promise you that when you hear the generational differences and the generational consequences that have been passed on from your great-great-grandparents to your grandparents to your mom and dad, that's not their own influence. They've been influenced by their culture or by a belief system or by an ideology or a philosophy or a theology that may not fit who you are today. I'm 55. I had to get a new ideology, a new philosophy, and a new theology so that I could be free from my past, so that I could challenge the stories that I made up. Some are true, some are valid, some are made up, but they're my truth. They weren't the truth. And maybe you need a piece of the puzzle from your family's generation to fill in the blank besides the story that you made up to survive that conversation, to survive that pain. Thanksgiving is coming up. Listen to the conversation at the table. Listen to how you're talking about your ancestors. Listen how you're talking about your family, because you could be passing on generational emotional consequences to the children who are in the house. Listen to you boast and brag about the upsets and frustrations of slavery. To boast and brag about the upsets of the F the police and the upsets of the political situation in today. You could be passing that conversation on to that child who's vulnerable, who doesn't even know what you're talking about, but now they're going to give a meaning because my uncle said this, or my mom or my dad said this about that. And now they take that on, and that's how they think about life. Indirectly, emotional consequences. Yes, there are spiritual consequences as well. Yes, there are spiritual, and from the seed of the father and from the eggs of the mother, of the emotional state of our moms, having babies under stress and anxiety and worry in the womb. We know that, but knowing makes no difference sometimes. We know what smoking does. We know what alcohol does. But does it make a difference? No, because we still drink it, we still buy it, we still smoke it. Knowing makes no difference. What's the impact on you? And then what's the impact on other people? What's the impact on others to others? What's the impact on you drinking alcohol on yourself and on your family? And what's the impact on drinking alcohol on yourself and your family and your cousins? That if you die from a drunk driving incident, that your whole family is impacted by your death. See, we don't get present to the impact of others to others. We get impact on what it is to me. and usually it's a negative. It's an hour 45 minutes. I got to get out of here. Thank you for listening in. This is the Farron Dozier Show. I wasn't going to do a show today. I was actually set up to do a rerun, but my heart put in my heart to call Caldwell and say, man, I need you to be on the show today. And I thank MB Radio H for making it work, as I took as long as I could to get Caldwell on the line the first almost 20 minutes of the show that he couldn't get on video, but he was able to get on the phone lines of MB Radio. I pray that this conversation helps you. If you're interested in supporting anything that we're up to that you heard that catches your attention, LBI Solutions, you can go there right now and look at all of the tabs about Caldwell and his curriculum and what we're up to. You can go to farrond.com for my stuff as a community, as an advocate, as a patient advocate. For more sickle cell trait information, wdconsct.org. If you want to talk about the Inland Empire Hounds, our first home game is this weekend. Hey, 20-game season. We already played 2 games. We got 18 games left. You want more information? You want to brand with us? You want to be a part of the conversations that we have for the love of dogs? IEHounds.com. You can go there. What else? I think that's enough. At Farron Dozier, if you want to reach out to me. Be a guest. Share your story. You got resources for veterans. You want to partner. You want to hang out and talk, as Caldwell did. Shout me out. I would love to have you here. Shouts out to MB Radio. Go there to that QR code right there and hit that and make a donation to keep us connected to our brothers and sisters globally. This platform is nationally and globally. Roku TV, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out. Shout us out. What's the count? I love y'all. I appreciate y'all for listening. We'll see what's happening next week at Farron Dozier to keep track. Shout us out. Love you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.